Have you ever stopped yourself from sharing something because you thought, who am I to talk about this when I'm still figuring it out myself? I think a lot of women my age have had that thought. We may have decades of experience from work and family life, difficult seasons, unexpected changes, and lessons learned the hard way. Still, we question whether any of it is worth talking about. Maybe it's because we're used to handling things without making a big announcement. We went to work, took care of our families, adjusted when plans changed, learned what we needed to learn, and kept moving. Most of the time, we didn't stop to think about how much experience we were collecting along the way. Lately, I've been thinking about how much knowledge sits inside each of us, and how often we dismiss it because it doesn't come with a huge audience, a perfectly polished success story, or a title that tells everyone we're qualified to speak. Hey everyone, welcome to Passport to Possibility podcast. If this is your first time listening, I'm Noelle. I'm a travel advisor and the owner of many travel adventures for us. After more than 3 decades in healthcare administration, I'm now building a travel business in my 50s, creating content, learning new technology, and trying things I never expected to do at this stage of my life. Today, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind. Why Gen X women still have something important to say, even when we're still living the story and don't have every part of the next chapter figured out. I recently came across a YouTube creator who started her channel because she believed people in our age group have a lot of life experience to share. She worked for decades, raised a family, traveled, experienced major changes, and eventually realized all of that gave her stories and lessons that might help someone else. What caught my attention wasn't just that she was creating videos as a Gen X woman, it was how she viewed her life experience as something valuable, not just something that belonged in the past. She was not saying that she had every answer. She was saying that she had lived enough life to have something worth contributing. That stayed with me because I think many of us have been conditioned to believe we need to reach some final level of success before we can share what we've learned. We think we need to be completely established before talking about business. We need to have everything organized before talking about starting over. We need to be fearless before talking about confidence. And we need a huge audience before believing our voice matters. But that is not how real life works. Most of us learn while we are doing. We understand things differently once we have lived through them, and sometimes the most useful perspective comes from someone who is still close enough to the experience to remember what it felt like. I am not recording this podcast from the other side of a perfectly completed success story. I am building the business right now. I am learning how to create content right now. I am learning how to record and produce a podcast right now. I'm figuring out what works, what does not work, what takes too much time, and what I need to change. There are days when I feel confident about what I'm building, and there are days when I wonder whether any of it is getting anywhere. That is where I am right now, and that is the place I am speaking from. And maybe that is not a weakness, maybe that is part of the value. Gen X grew up in a very different world from the one we are living in now. We did not grow up with smartphones, social media, search engines, or instant access to instructions for almost anything. When we needed information, we had to find it in a book, ask someone who knew, call a business, or figure it out through trial and error. We learned how to entertain ourselves. We learned how to wait. We learned how to solve problems without always having someone immediately available to guide us through every step. That independence has helped us in a lot of ways. It has made many of us resourceful. It has made us persistent. It has made us willing to learn because we have already lived through enormous changes in how people work, communicate, shop, travel, and build relationships. But there is another side to that independence. Sometimes we become so accustomed to figuring everything out ourselves that we struggle to ask for help. We assume we should already know what we are doing. We feel embarrassed when something that seems easy for someone younger feels unfamiliar to us. I have experienced that more times than I can count while building my business. I have learned how to build and manage websites, use social media platforms, create email marketing, produce a podcast, understand search engine optimization, design graphics, edit videos, use online booking tools, and work with artificial intelligence. Some of those things did not even exist when I began my career. There have been moments when I have looked at the screen and thought, I have no idea what this is asking me to do. Sometimes I search for instructions. Sometimes I watch a video. Sometimes I ask for help. Sometimes I make a mistake, undo it, and try again. That may not sound dramatic, but I think it says something important at this stage of life. We are not too old to learn new things. We are not too far into our lives to change direction. We are not limited to the skills we learned in our 20s or the career we built in our 30s and 40s. And starting something new now does not erase everything that came before it. I spent more than 3 decades in healthcare administration. I also have a background in business administration. I may no longer work in the same setting, but the skills I developed did not disappear when that part of my employment ended. I still use organization, communication, problem solving, customer service, planning, and the ability to manage many moving pieces at once. Those skills show up in the way I run my travel business, communicate with clients, build systems, and create content. I am not starting from nothing. I am starting with decades of experience and applying it differently. I think that distinction matters because the phrase starting over can make it sound as though everything before that point has been lost or wasted. It has not. Starting over in midlife is rarely a blank page. It is more like taking everything you have learned and deciding what still belongs, what no longer fits, and what you want to do with it now. Some things come with us, some things stay behind us. Some things finally make sense because we are looking at them from a different point in our lives. And sometimes we begin something that our younger selves would never have expected. I never spent my earlier career thinking that one day I would have my own podcast. I did not imagine myself recording episodes, creating cover graphics, editing audio, publishing show notes, or trying to understand how podcast distribution works. I did not expect to build a travel business or to spend my time researching destinations, accommodations, family needs, accessibility, and the details that help a trip work better for the people taking it. But those are the things that I am doing now. And I think one of the reasons I began this podcast is because I wanted a place to talk about more than a destination or a business opportunity. I wanted a place to talk about what happens when life changes direction. I wanted to talk about travel and why certain trips matter. I wanted to talk about building something while still handling real life. I wanted to talk about the decisions that do not look enormous from the outside, but quietly change what becomes possible. And I wanted to create conversations that might reach someone who is sitting there wondering whether it's too late to try something different. The answer I keep coming back to is no. That does not mean starting something new will be easy. It does not mean everything will work. It does not mean we will suddenly stop doubting ourselves. It means we are still allowed to be curious and what else we could do. We are still allowed to want something different. We are still allowed to learn, create, contribute, change our minds, and build lives that fit who we are now rather than who we were expected to remain. I also think women our age have spent a lot of time taking care of what needed to be taken care of. We built careers. We raised children. We helped family members. We managed homes, appointments, schedules, finances, emergencies, and all the ordinary responsibilities that keep life moving. Some women are still doing all of those things at once. Some are caring for children and parents. Some are helping adult children. Some are navigating health concerns, career changes, relationship changes, or financial uncertainty. So when we talk about reinvention, it cannot always be presented as though someone simply wakes up one morning, clears the calendar, and begins a completely new life without any obligations. That is not how it works for most people. Sometimes building something new happens early in the morning, during lunch breaks, between appointments, or in the middle of a week that did not go according to plan. Sometimes it happens slowly. Sometimes progress is difficult to see because it is being made in small pieces. That does not make it less real. When I was still working full-time, I built my business in the time I could find. I completed training, learned new systems, worked on my website, and began putting the foundation in place while still managing my regular job and the rest of my life. There were days when I did not know whether any of it was leading anywhere, but when my healthcare employment ended, I was not at the beginning with only an idea. I had already been building something. That experience changed the way I think about small steps. We tend to celebrate the visible moment when something changes. We notice when someone launches the business, publishes the book, begins the podcast, leaves the job, or announces the new direction. What we do not always see are the months or years of learning, planning, second guessing, and quiet work that happened first. Gen X women understand quiet work. We understand showing up when nobody is applauding. We understand handling what needs to be handled and continuing even when the outcome is uncertain. And I think those experiences deserve to be part of the conversation. We also have the benefit of perspective. By this point in our lives, most of us have learned that very few things go exactly according to plan. We know that a career can change, a relationship can change, a family can change, health can change, finances can change. The role we expected to have at this age may not look anything like the life we were actually living. That does not mean we always handle those changes perfectly. It means we know life can shift, and we know what we are capable of adjusting because we have done it before. We also know that success does not always look the way we once imagined it would. When I was younger, success may have seemed more connected to a job title, a steady career path, or reaching certain milestones in a certain order. Now I think much more about whether the way I am working fits my life. I think about whether I am building something that matters to me. I think about whether I am still learning. I think about whether I am creating more choices for myself and my family. And I think about whether the work reflects who I am now. I do not have a neat conclusion that says I have figured all of this out. I have not. I am still testing ideas. I am still learning how to manage my time. I am still learning and trying to grow my business. I am still working out the role this podcast will play and the subject I most want to talk about. But I am beginning to see that I do not need to wait until every answer is clear before I speak. I can share what I've learned so far. I can talk about what I am working through. I can tell the truth about what is difficult without turning it into defeat. I can celebrate what is going well without pretending everything is perfect. And I can leave room for the conversation to change as I change. That may be one of the most important things about having a voice in midlife. We are not speaking because we believe we know everything. We are speaking because we have lived enough to know that experience matters, stories matter, and sometimes hearing someone else say, "I am still figuring this out too," is exactly what another person needs. There may be someone listening who has an idea she keeps putting off. Maybe she wants to begin a business, start a creative project, change careers, travel somewhere she has always wanted to go, return to school, write, speak, teach, or simply make more room for something that belongs to her. Maybe she does not feel qualified. Maybe she thinks she missed the right time. Maybe she is waiting until life becomes less complicated. And maybe she needs to hear that there may never be a perfectly uncomplicated time. Sometimes we begin because the idea continues to matter, even while everything else is still happening. That is what I want this podcast to make room for. I want to talk about travel because travel has played an important role in my life and in the business I am building. I want to talk about entrepreneurship because learning how to build something of my own has changed the way I see work and possibility. I want to talk about starting again because I know what it is like to reach a point in life where the plan changes and you must decide what comes next. And I want to talk about being a Gen X woman, learning, creating, and speaking up at a time when it would be easy to decide that the opportunity has already passed. It has not passed. We are not finished learning. We are not finished contributing. We are not finished creating memories, building businesses, sharing stories, taking trips, changing direction, or surprising ourselves. Our lives do not become less meaningful because we have reached our 50s. In many ways, we finally understand ourselves well enough to make more intentional decisions about what we want to carry forward. So yes, Gen X, we still have something to say. We have stories about work and family, mistakes and resilience, travel and change, responsibility and reinvention. We have lessons that may help someone younger. We have experiences that may help someone our own age feel less alone. And we have ideas that are still worth trying. I do not know exactly where every part of this podcast will lead, but I know I want it to remain a place for honest conversation about building something new, finding possibility in unexpected places, and recognizing that our stories are still being written. And I hope that as I share more of mine, you will think differently about the value of your own. If there is something you have been wanting to begin, maybe this is your reminder that you do not need a perfect plan or a finished success story before taking the first step. You can begin with the experience you already have. You can learn what you do not know. You can adjust as you go. And you can decide that what you have to say is worth sharing. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you shared it with a friend or shared it on social media and tagged me. Just search for Mini Travel Adventures, 4 US, so I can personally thank you and hear which episodes you're enjoying. Until next time, thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the biggest changes in our lives begin with one small step. I'll see you in the next episode.